He's on the way, but we'll start.
Good evening. Howard Glazer, Director of State Operations, joined by Governor Cuomo and Senator Schumer. This evening, in fact, just as we speak, President Obama is submitting a supplemental budget request for aid for New York, New Jersey, and the region for Hurricane Sandy aid. You can see on the screen here, I'll just very quickly walk through it with you. It's a supplemental appropriation request for in excess of $60 billion, approximately $60.4 billion for regional recovery and prevention mitigation. The major areas include additional money for FEMA disaster relief. This is the standard FEMA account that provides individual assistance and housing assistance to individuals. That's a total of $11.8 billion. That's in addition to what's already in FEMA's accounts today. Secondly, the National Flood Insurance Program, which provides insurance proceeds to homes that have suffered damage or been destroyed as a result of flooding. That program today is underfunded, would not have sufficient aid to assist homeowners in the region. The President is proposing $9.7 billion in additional funding to fully fund the National Flood Insurance Program. The Community Development Block Grant Program, the President is proposing $17 billion. This is very flexible funding that is provided through the states and to jurisdictions within the state that allows rebuilding very broadly for many different uses, for individuals, for municipalities, for the state itself in rebuilding infrastructure, homes, and businesses as well. $5.5 billion for the Army Corps of Engineers to assist with infrastructure projects. Generally, these are broader infrastructure projects that could include transportation, coastal management, etc. Small Business Administration, $750 million for assistance to small businesses specifically. Social Service Block Grant funds in the amount of $500 million to assist individuals whose lives have been disrupted by the storm. A very significant amount of $11.7 billion. New York suffered tremendous damage to the transportation network. That $11+ billion is for rebuilding and prevention for the state's transportation systems, including the highways, the tunnels, the airports, and the rail systems. Water and sewer was an area that was hard hit throughout the coastal areas, and the request includes $600 million to assist in rebuilding and the hardening of those facilities for future protection as well. A variety of programs through the USDA, through the Interior Department, through the Commerce Department to improve coastal management and water systems along the coastline, and additionally about $1.7 billion in other federal funds, totaling over $60.4 billion in additional aid requested by the President in a letter which went up to Capitol Hill today.
I want to thank Howard Glazer very much for the good work on this and the entire team. This is the first good news New York has had in a while, and we certainly need it because we've had enough bad news, as everybody knows. This request by the President for $60 billion, which obviously still has to go through the House, has to go through the Senate, but it is a great first step, is a very big deal for New York. $60 billion would be for New York, New Jersey primarily. Connecticut is also included, but proportionately on the need, New York would get the majority of the money. This is funding that we would use to fund housing reconstruction, small business loans, reimburse governments for the cost, which is very important. Otherwise, the local governments would have had to bear the cost themselves, would have raised the deficits and raised the burdens on local taxpayers. There's also funding here to do mitigation, which is very, very important. We want to learn from this experience. Extreme weather is a reality. I think it would be foolish to think this is never going to happen again. So rather than do this kind of damage every time to homes, to businesses, to people's lives, let's spend the package, meaning a lot of it is in a federal program called the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is a very flexible program, so it is providing the state funds in a way that makes them very usable, so that the funding stream is actually more valuable to the state. So we're very pleased and proud about that. The White House has also said that if there is an additional need in the future, they understand that, and if there's an additional need, that we can work on additional supplemental appropriations in the future, and they would be supportive of that, and we would work with that through the Congress also. Again, there is more to do. There is no doubt. We have to get the legislation fully passed. The President sending up the bill is only the first step. And this is a very difficult time in Washington, as we all know, politically and financially. But it's a powerful first step, and it's a powerful message. And for New Yorkers who have had a lot of bad news and wondering how do we put these pieces back together again, how do we rebuild homes and rebuild lives and rebuild communities, we're going to be okay. If we get this funding, this is going to be a significant asset for this state. I said initially that we needed it. If we don't have federal assistance, this is going to be a very difficult road for New York to travel. It's adding insult to injury. We have the damage of the storm, and then we have to finance the reconstruction while we're hindered by the damage. So we need the federal help, but I believe we're going to get it, and I believe it's going to be significant, and I believe it's going to make a positive difference. This has been a very big effort. It's been a joint effort by the people here in the state and by the congressional delegation, the senators who represent New York State and the congresspeople who represent New York State. And I have to tell you, there's a lot of stories of government not working well and people playing politics. This story has been the exact opposite. Our congressional delegation came together, Democrats and Republicans, both houses, congressional members from upstate New York who don't really have a specific stake in this piece of legislation were fantastic in how hard they worked for us. So it was really, I was pleased, and it was my honor to work in such a productive effort that really focused on getting things done for the state of New York. And that's what government is all about at the end of the day. And with that, let me turn it over to our New York's senior senator, who I've worked with very closely, multiple times per day, every day, it seems like, weekends included, and has been a tremendous fighter for the state of New York and an advocate for the state of New York. As I said, we don't have the ball in the end zone yet, but Senator Schumer has really done great work, and I want to thank him on behalf of all of the people of the state of New York for getting us to this point. Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you, Governor, and let me thank you for your leadership. As the Governor said, this has been sort of a seamless web between two states, two parties, two houses of government, and we have all worked very closely together, and I'd like to thank the Governor for his leadership here. As he said, we probably talk 3-4 times a day. I have his cell phone memorized in my sleep almost, and it's led to good and positive result. So I thank him, and I want to thank my colleague, Senator Gillibrand, who couldn't be here, my House colleagues from New York, both Democrat and Republican, as well as the New Jersey delegation, Senators Lautenberg and Menendez. Just last night, Senator Gillibrand, Menendez, and I were in the room with Sean, in my office in Washington, with Sean Donovan and Jeff Zients, the head of the OMB, till about 8 o'clock, making sure that we maximized the benefit for New York. This is a very good start. $60 billion is a lot of money. While it doesn't cover everything we need, it's a very good percentage. They say half a loaf is better than none. Well, 3/4 is better than half, and it's doing very well, particularly by Washington standards. And so we're very happy with the number, although, obviously, we're going to keep fighting for more. Just as important as the number, and by the way, there'll be other funding in addition to the $60 billion. There still is money in the FEMA pipeline and the flood insurance pipeline that will be in addition to this. So we're not at the number we requested, but we're fairly close, and that's good. Even more important is flexibility. We fought really hard to give our states the flexibility they need to deal with the problems. So that means that while present law says to a homeowner you're not going to get more than $31,900, if you've had $100,000 in damage, you can get help. while present law says to a small business person, you can only get a loan at 4 to 6%, and that doesn't help the small business, there's flexibility so that small business person can be helped. It says to a locality that while you need help in rebuilding your shores and you don't have the money, we can be there for you. It says to our hospitals that have been suffered so that there's now new help, both from the government and from NIH, to deal with these issues. So there's real flexibility here, and that's important. And the second important point, the two breakthroughs here were flexibility and mitigation. We got significant dollars for mitigation. What does that mean? That means you don't want to rebuild the MTA the way it was 108 years ago when it started. You want to build it better so that when the next storm occurs, and we know it will, there'll be less flooding of our subways and our railroads. You want to make sure that you have the ability, when you rebuild your home, not to build it exactly the way it was, but that in a way that protects itself from the next storm. This idea that we should have 300,000 people leave the southern coast of New York from Staten Island through Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island doesn't make sense. First, it's a huge number of people. Second, it's not like a rural place where they can move to the top of the hill. There's nowhere for them to go, and we're not going to have our city shrink. But this mitigation money means you can rebuild and make sure that things are safer than they were before. The other point I'd like to make is the care with which this package was both put together by the governor of New York and the governor of New Jersey, and by the delegation and the White House. The fact that this package has been so carefully put together makes it easier for us to sell it in Washington in the Congress. I want to make no mistake about it. No one should mistake the fact that this is going to be easy. We can snap our fingers and Congress is just going to jump. Because of the fiscal cliff and the fiscal problems in Washington, and because there are members of Congress, particularly those in the House, some of the new members in the House, who don't believe in disaster relief unless it's offset, this is a rough fight. But the fact that this package has been carefully put together means we have a much better chance of getting all of it done. We're going to have to come back. We know there'll have to be additional supplementals. Katrina had, I think, 8. But this is a large first step. And when we started, the governor and the delegation agreed that we would try to ask for as much as we could of the money we needed at the beginning, and getting close to 3/4, I think, meets that standard and meets it well. So we are both happy with the initial result, but resolved that we're going to have a lot of work to do to get it through the House and Senate. I am very hopeful that we can do just that.
Well said. Thank you. Questions?
Governor, the senator touched on this, but would you like to see more money? Do you think $60 billion was enough initially?
Would I like to see more money? The answer is yes. Of course it's yes. The initial request was for more money, as you know. Do I think this is a very positive and healthy start? I certainly do. $60 billion is a lot of money. It really is a lot of money, especially in this environment, especially at this time. And we have the ability, when there is additional need, we can go back to the White House and go back to the Congress for another supplemental appropriation. But this is a very big positive step. And it is an amount that I think is, while not everything we've asked for and possibly everything we'll need eventually, short term, this is really going to make a major dent in our situation, and a positive one at that.
We always, the White House knows, we've said to them, I said it as recently as an hour ago, we're going to have to come back for 2 reasons. First, this doesn't cover all of our needs. And second, we're going to find new needs. That's what happened with every major storm, whether it's Andrew or Katrina or anything else. And so we know that this is not the only chapter in this book. There are going to be others. But to get so much at the beginning, a greater percentage than Katrina probably, is an enormous first accomplishment.
Yeah. Another big advantage here, if this works, if we get this funding this quickly, it'll make a major difference. You know, Washington, not to disparage Washington, sometimes doesn't move all that fast from a state's point of view. If we had to be waiting for months and months and months for funding, and we were unsure what the amount of funding was, it would be very difficult. We have to do a state budget in February. People need money today in homes. Small businesses need money today. This, if it passes, gives us the advantage to get to work now. And that is a major benefit for this state. And if you said to me, $60 billion today or $80 billion in 6 months, it would be a very tough choice, but I think I would choose the funding today. Because to be able to go back to those communities now and say, this is the program, this is how much we have, this is what we can do, just from a human point of view, families who have been waiting for answers and waiting for help, it is a major difference.
Yeah, let me talk a little about timing here. The governor alluded to it. We would like to get this done by December 31st. We'd like it to be separate from the fiscal cliff, because we don't want somebody to say at the end of the day, oh, we need $10 more billion to solve the fiscal cliff problem. Let's take it out of New York, New Jersey. And because, so we want to keep it separate, but we also want to do it quickly. And so the reason that we pushed the administration, the governor and the delegation, both governors and both delegations, the reason we pushed them to get it done now is it'll take several days to write this up in legislative language. The president's request is just, you'll see it's a letter and a whole bunch of addendums, and then get it passed. So we want to do this fast, and our hope would be December 31st. Okay.
Sir?
Governor, you recently went down to Washington and spoke with Speaker Boehner. Is it your impression that the 60 billion number is within the threshold of what would be acceptable?
He needs a chair.
We had a series of meetings all across the board. As you know, I met with the speaker. The speaker said he was favorably inclined on the issue and he wanted to be helpful. We didn't have a specific conversation in terms of dollars, but this has been a range that has been in the newspaper and been publicly discussed, so he knew the range of funding. No one can say that they're going to be surprised when they hear this number. We were aggressive about stating our need. We were not shy about it. There's been a lot of discussion. I wanted it that way, frankly, because I wanted it done, and I wanted everybody to know that it was important. So nobody can say they didn't know about this. And now I have the special pleasure. We were bragging on the congressional delegation before you walked in, Congressman, and how pleased and proud we were of the progress we've made thus far. On the President's request, we've been cautious that we still have to get it passed, a little thing like that, getting it through the House and the Senate. But it's a great first step, and I can't tell you how proud and how I applauded the delegation that really came together and played like a team and made a significant difference for New York. And New York needed it now, frankly. A lot of people were depending on us. A lot of communities are depending on us. And the delegation was fantastic, and we're pleased to be joined by the dean of the delegation and a great New Yorker, Congressman Charles Rankel.
Well, Governor, it goes without saying, a lot of it had to do with your leadership, certainly Chuck Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, and the Republicans on our delegation made a great bipartisan effort. We haven't seen that in a long time, but like in New York, when a crisis is there, we come together. And we were proud to be New Yorkers and show the compassion that we did at a time that it was needed, but more importantly, the response of the President. It's not all that we need, and as you pointed out in talking with the delegation, we got a lot more things to do, but I've never felt more proud in working with you and Chuck and Senator Gillibrand, and let's get on with what we have to do and get the whole job done. Thank you.
Well said. Here, here. Any other questions? Any questions for the Congressman? Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, Charles, you made it in the nick of
Yeah.
time, baby.
I want you to know, I don't know what's going on, but Sharpton wanted me to make it clear to you that